Maven interviews are all about capturing people's diverse passions and special skill sets. Bob Garlick and Andrew McGivern chat with local and international specialists to find out what they do and why they do it.
Hey everybody, it's Bob here for the Maven interviews, and I've got a very interesting guest with me today, Cliff Roth. Yeah, and the reason I say that because he we'll talk about it later, but he is a fan of an amazing band, and you got to talk like that when you talk about that band. But Cliff, you're very well known on Google Plus. You got hundreds of thousands of followers, which is shocking. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. But really, what you're known for is your amazing artwork. And today we're going to be doing the interview, talking about art, talking about lots of stuff, a very free form, which is classic for us. And you're going to actually do a live painting at the same time. Is that what's going on?
I certainly could, yes.
Yeah, because I'd like to. You're doing this on Google Plus all the time, and you're actually raising funds for yourself. And I was just checking it out earlier today, and man, it's amazing. Now that you've hit a certain target, if people continue to contribute, will they get the illustration for $15, or is that for the people that contributed before?
Since we did hit that 4,000 threshold there, anybody who for now like pledges 15 or above they'll get additional speed painting in the addition to whatever it was their chosen perk.
Yeah. We'll put a link on the show notes. Now, how long is that going to be up and live for? Are you going to keep running with it for as long as possible?
Well, that's actually operational only. As far as the Indiegogo campaign to which you refer itself goes, that is only operational till the end of November. So we're getting really down to the wire on that. However, I still am taking commissions. It's not like I'm not going to be selling my artwork, but the prices would revert back to normal.
Exactly. And God, you've got like, what, 200, let me just look at your profile here. 295,000, more than 295,000 people. That's huge. Now, how did that happen? Like, I got like 4,000. Was it because you got interviewed in the Huffington Post and what was it? It wasn't New York Times. It was... there
was another one.
Forbes. That's what
Forbes,
it was. Yeah.
Forbes.com. Yes. And that's going back to the summer of 2012. So I bet that's about when the main giant jump in numbers came. There was a brief time for about a month I was on the suggested user list, so that greatly inflated my numbers as well. And to this day, I think a vast majority of those people don't actually even realize they have me specifically circled. I think they just circled, like they took the whole group. At that time, I was on the suggested user list, and whoever happened to be in that group, they, got as well. And so a lot of people who have me circled don't necessarily even know they have me circled.
Well, I guess it depends how active you are on Google, the news stream and checking what other people are doing. Like, I'm on it all the time because I'm addicted to it, which is real sad. But hey, somebody's got to do it. And you pop up all the time. So you're pretty active. I would think that's one of the problems with these automatic lists where it's like, oh, God, yeah, I can join all these people and they're going to follow me back and I'm going to be great. So, it doesn't work that way in Google+. Maybe in some of the other platforms.
Yeah, it's not reciprocal. I couldn't even begin to follow everybody who is circling me. It just doesn't work that way. There's a cap in the amount you can circle anyway. And I don't treat it like that in the first place just because you're interested in what I'm posting or vice versa doesn't mean the reverse is true. You could be posting awesome stuff, but you might think my stuff is crap.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no reason for you to circle me back. Why would you? I'm not posting anything you're interested in. Or vice versa. You might love my stuff, but I go see your stream and I don't particularly care for anything. Not that it's not interesting to somebody who likes whatever it is. It's just not interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, we're living in a micro niche reality now for content, and people can choose whatever they want, and it goes back to that classic statement that, look, if something's pissing you off, just don't look at it. And it's so true today. It's like if somebody's doing boring stuff or spammy stuff, well, just don't follow them or don't look at their stuff. Get over it. Don't get all riled and I'm gonna make a big message about it and get into a spammy type fight. I wanted to ask you, why did you decide to do this Indiegogo or this fundraising? Basically, it's fundraising for yourself. Is what motivated you to get that?
All right. Well, let's see. To put it in a nutshell, a little while ago, I had started falling behind in bills, which I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with. It happens. We had car trouble, and we had to end up replacing our car, and one thing led to another. Next thing we know, we're pretty behind in rent. And that's a pretty important thing. Our landlords, they're good people. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. They're good people. But, there comes a point where they need to be making money. And it is an investment property. And what really happened is that a little while ago, the actual owner of the house bought another investment property at all, and that cost a lot of money for them to set up, because this house they own outright. So they were okay to be lenient. It wasn't the problem as long as we eventually did pay, which we always did, up until we started falling even further behind. But with the new investment property, which hasn't hit the threshold where it's as profit, it's not in the black, as it were. Now they need every money. All their other income properties, including this one, they need their money. And it makes sense because they have their own bills to pay, and that's perfectly understandable. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's not like they're slumlords or anything, because they're really not. So I'm like, well, how can I come up with, because we had gotten things saying how much exactly we owe and whatnot, and that they really need their money, and they do. So I'm like, all right, how in a short time can I make a concise place where people could sort of help me out, but not have it where you're just giving me money for the sake of giving me money, because I don't necessarily believe in that, because I wouldn't put myself, even though, yes, there was a chance, I don't think there still is, I hope there isn't, but there was a chance that I could have been evicted. I think that chance has been mitigated because they are aware of the campaign and they are following it. So with the funds that are in there currently, that would bring me into paying, back rent up until current. So December's isn't covered yet. That would be the rest of the campaign being full, getting December's rent, because I wanted to give myself enough of a buffer. So I have processes going into place, because right now I'm on paternity leave, so that gives me a little more time to work on the art at the end of it and set up stuff for future income coming in. Like I have a Zazzle store that's in process. There's only very few products there at the moment, but there's going to be more. Store Envy site, and now that I'm doing more traditional art, there'll be some of that for sale. So there's other processes so I don't fall back into the hole again. But in the meantime, what was a way I could dig myself out of the hole? But like I said, I didn't want it to be like, listen, my home wasn't flattened in a tornado or anything like that. So I certainly wasn't going to be like, give me money, you're just going to feel good about it, but not actually get anything in return. So I am not actually selling my artwork at pretty decent, at discounted rates if you go through the Indiegogo, definitely. So I chose Indiegogo as opposed to Kickstarter, which I've used in the past, because I have had a couple campaigns on Kickstarter going back a year or two ago. So one was successful, one not successful, but that's beside the point. But those were for specific projects, which is what Kickstarter's about. Whereas Indiegogo can be for specific projects or pretty much funding anything. It didn't really matter. When it comes to what you're funding with it, it's different. So I went with Indiegogo, and what's good about them is since they're using, you can pay with PayPal. So anybody who pays with PayPal, that money is accessible immediately. So I have already used some of the funds from this campaign to give to the landlord. So
I guess they ran out of. I guess they've got a lot of character. That you've given them lots of art already, so they've kind of arted out. Okay, sorry. I've given my landlord wine. So I got all this wine in the back. Here's a couple of bottles. Give me 15 days. Okay, Bob. It's a perpetual story for people that are creative. It's our minds aren't really hardwired for financial. It's just not part of the equation. It's like we just love creating, and as long as we're creating, we're having so much fun doing it. It's like I don't take it, and you end up giving away a lot of your stuff because you just love creating stuff. I mean, that's for me. I'm way too generous, much to the chagrin of my wife. I said, Bob, Bob, you can't be giving it all away. I say, come on, don't worry about it.
I have a question for you. Do you have a link so I can share this, so people can actually, so my phone can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's.
I was gonna say I don't have a link for this, so
Yeah, I know. It's very fun. It's funny because it's all the whole layout has changed, and I don't know where the damn link is now.
I believe in the lower right-hand corner, it should say something about the links.
Let me see. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Oh, good man. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about art and stuff like that.
Sure.
Because it is a different way of thinking and living and enjoying your time in this spectrum or this part of reality. For you, when did you realize you were an artist? Well, let me rephrase that, because most times that the real artists very rarely think themselves artists because they're very self-critical. So when did you discover, when you were in school and stuff like that you enjoyed going to art class more than any other class?
Up until there was very, very few art classes growing up that I could even tolerate. I didn't like any of them. With the exception of in my middle school, middle school, there was a art teacher by the name of Mr. Paisler who was excellent. He was awesome. I loved him as an art teacher, but growing up, like, the elementary school art teacher, I couldn't stand her. She was horrible. I mean, it was just, she was a bad teacher. And then when I got into high school, for a good chunk of my high school art career, they had the same damn teacher I had in elementary school, and she taught it the exact same damn way. So there was a brief time where she was actually out on medical leave. Because something bad had happened to her, and it's dreadful. She had, I think it was brain cancer, and that's terrible. And at the time, me being a high school student and an artist who liked, I liked art in general. There was a part of me, I hate to admit this, but there was a part of me that's like, yes, maybe we'll get a good art teacher in there. And so, not that I was cheering her illness, because I certainly wasn't, but just the fact that the school found a reason that she wasn't going to be there in the class, and they actually had a couple good fill-in art teachers, none of which stayed for any long length of time. But I did have a photography teacher who was awesome, Philip Perlman, and he was a great teacher. I wish I was a better student in that class because I didn't pay as much attention. And I believe he was the 3D art teacher, like teaching sculpture as well. So he was a good art teacher. But for the most part, I didn't really have that many good art teachers. I learned most of my art while doodling in the other classes.
Yeah, I had some awesome teachers, and they basically, I remember one when I was in high school. I kind of finagled it, so I had 3 courses that were all art-based, back-to-back, one semester, and a spare. So basically, that whole semester, all I was doing was hanging out in the art room. And she gave me the keys to the supply closet. She said, "Here, Bob, you just do anything you want." And I did thousands of pieces. I mean, just insane how much stuff I was putting out. And I'd sit it in the class, and I would just be this outrageous, super-duper creative dude. I remember one time she said, "Okay, we're going to do a creative exercise here, kids. And what I want you to do is," and she put the word brick on the chalkboard, and she says, "I want you to come up with as many things that you can do with a brick in the next 2 minutes." And then after the 2 minutes, she says, "Okay, how many people have 5 ideas?" And a bunch of hands went up. "How many people have 10 ideas?" And a couple more hands. "How many people had 30 ideas?" And like a couple more hands go up. Or I think we started with all our hands up, and then hands were going down. But anyways, and said, "Okay, how many people have more than 50?" And I had my hand stuck up. Nobody else had their hands up. And she said, "Bob, how many you got?" And I said, "Let me see. I've got 114. And she said, "What? 104? Like what? What do you got there?" I said, "Well, a crayon for a caveman was one of them." So, it was just like full. I have so much creative potential here. And at that point, she said, "Okay, Bob, you just go be an artist and do whatever you want." She said the frustrating thing with me is I didn't finish a lot of my art. I was so into experimenting. It's like, this is great, and next.
I'm like that today. I mean, client pieces aside, and even in some very rare instances, there is one piece that I have been working on a little bit here and there, a little bit there for a while now, because it's a style completely different than what I do, and I don't want to finish it prematurely where my skill level wasn't to where it's going to be a good piece. So there has been a piece that's on a back burner for quite some time, because it's going to be a steampunk scene, but steampunk isn't really something I normally do. So yeah, the whole style is completely different than what I'm used to. So meanwhile, I work on other projects to build up my skill level till I can do finish that particular project perfectly. But that one doesn't have a deadline, and to me, I need deadlines, because if I don't have a deadline, there's a good chance that it's going to keep getting shoved into the back burner for things that do have deadlines.
What are you going to be? What style are you thinking of for this steampunk? Are you going to go like more airbrushy? Are you going to do something that's very...
No, that's digitally painted. That's, it's going to be more... See, I'm more into predominantly realism, so although I do surrealism as well, but it'd be fairly on the realistic side. But there was a specific style he had already liked. Like, he showed me plenty of reference pictures, so I'm going to be pretty much mimicking somebody else's style to begin with. But just the conceiving of it's more the conceiving end of it, like the designing part of it, which is more of a weak spot for me, especially in a genre that I know very, very little about.
Well, you specialize in caricatures, right?
I do now, yes. I did more portraiture at one time, but now I do predominantly, I do a lot of caricature. Yeah.
Well, it's just because it's a more viable thing to let people are more interested in buying caricatures because it's more them centric.
No, because a lot of the drawings I do nobody even sees or purchases. No, it's because people fascinate me. No, so whether it's just writing about them or thinking about them or just observing them, I'm a people watcher, and I'm a natural doodler. So putting two and two together, they go naturally together. I want to say my first successful caricature, I would say, I doubt if anybody, very few people would even remember seeing it. In fact, I don't think anybody saw it. Was in a sketchbook, not a sketchbook, a notebook for social studies class. It was one of my teachers, I want to say his name is Mr. Ziegler, if I remember correctly. And it was the first time, it was a quick little pen doodle. I mean, it took up literally like this big. I mean, it was small. But it was the first time I felt like I had captured somebody's essence on paper. And that feeling never was met again until years and years and years, much, much later before I was able to do that again. It was sort of a fluke, but it was like, holy crap, that actually looks like him. And it was not just looks like him, because something could look like somebody without actually having any personality of them at all. So it wasn't just likeness. It was more that it caught their essence, like, hey, that's them. Whether it actually physically looked like them or not, it had their essence.
Yeah, well, you caught, it's very interesting because I remember doing exercises which were very, very fast, like 5-second sketches, and basically what you were trying to do is somebody would do a pose, you had 5 seconds to catch it, and all you were doing was the major energy lines and the powers. And when you're getting into caricature, that's really what you're doing. You're doing the same thing, except it's characterizations of the face, like the hair. This guy's got a forehead that's like this, his hair's like this, his nose like this, and those are like quick lines, and then you're just adding detail.
Essentially, yeah. You're basically capturing on paper how you would describe somebody to your friend who never saw them. Like, oh, he had like a big, ginormous nose, or that's probably a bad example because everybody exaggerates the nose when most of the time. A lot of times it's not actually appropriate. Yeah. Or he had a forehead you could project a movie onto. And, it's like, so yeah, that's how we remember people. We remember people in caricature, not portraiture.
Yeah.
So I for a long time I was doing portraits, either of people or pets, and it got boring. I was doing it in colored pencil, which takes forever. And I was bored out of my damn mind. It became repetitive, and I was just doing it for clients, and I was just bored. Because I wasn't exaggerating, I wasn't enhancing anything. I was just pretty much, it's like a photograph could have just done the job much better than I could have. But I mean, people liked it, and it was good, and it sold. It's not that it didn't sell. It was just not. There was no art to it. It's just I wasn't injecting anything into it.
Yeah, it was like a job. It's like, hey, here I am.
And so I stopped it. I moved away from it for a while, and I had never got it. It took me a long time to get into caricature because in my head, I was picturing caricature more as, in my opinion, the bad version of the ones you get at the amusement parks. I'm not going to say amusement park ones in general, because there are some fantastic artists out there who do very unique pieces.
Yes.
But I'm talking about more the cookie cutter ones, where they draw every face the same pretty much, and they just tweak some minor tweak, and it doesn't really look like the person, but the people convince themselves it does. Those are what in my head caricature was, but my eyes were open much later when I saw what better real caricature could be. And I want to say the one who opened my mind to that would have been Joe Bloom. I'm probably not pronouncing his last name 100% properly, but I have his book right here, which has a caricature of me in it.
Oh, cool.
And if any of you have seen that Chipotle commercial that they had done with the scarecrow in it.
Oh, awesome.
He's the art director who is behind this.
Wow.
So I have this book right here called Rejects, which is by Joe Bloom, and he has a blog. He had a blog that he still does, where he wrote a lot about the art of caricature, and he had plenty of YouTube videos. And it was his first YouTube channel, I think, one of the first few I subscribed to. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome, and it opened me up to the whole world of caricature. And in here, I just so happen to have one of me he did. I don't know if the light's catching that or not, but
that's when you had a bigger goatee.
Yeah. Back then, I used to keep this part bigger. But here, when I started seeing this, and now, like his exaggerations, like these, those are awesome.
Yeah.
But that's not in my head what caricature was at the time. It was it was more generic than that. And so yeah, since then I'm like, wait a second, maybe I should take a better look at caricature, and that brought my love of drawing people again. I mean, I was always drawing people like sitting down in the cafeterias or whatnot. I was always doing that kind of stuff, but I wasn't like drawing people's heads or portraits for a while because I was bored of it. But once I saw what caricature could be, that got me much more into it, and then I started doing it. And I never got to the point where I don't do extreme caricature very often. I try to, but usually the more I work on a piece, it tends to move more towards portraiture because that's where my roots are. So the longer I work on a piece, if I'm not careful, I will sort of start bringing the proportions back in alignment, even though my original sketch is much more exaggerated than the finished product. Speaking of which, I should switch over to screen sharing and start your painting.
Yeah, no problem. So, Mad Magazine was probably the first time that I saw some awesome caricatures. They did great work. And then the one that really, really, I'm just going to look them up to make sure I get their name right because I'm terrible with names. I think it's Ralph's, maybe not. The guy that did with Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and the guy that did the illustrations that were really splotchy and stuff. It was like Ralph Steadman or what the heck was his name? Very distorted, psychotic looking. Usually black ink was used, and lots of blotches and things, and very intense. And those are caricatures, but because it was a distortion of reality. I mean, when I say caricatures, for me as an art form, what it is taking somebody or something and accentuating and distorting a particular feature from that person or thing to make it more interesting to look at. And you can go from very plain stuff, like you're saying, that's almost like cheating, to extremely almost disturbing level where you go, wow.
There's a general argument in the caricature community that tries to differentiate between what caricature is versus what impressionism is, or it's not. Whereas, like, if it's distortion, like for example, taking a big nose and making it smaller, that's actually going against what it actually would be in relationship to the other, then it's no longer caricature. Caricature is taking what is there and turning the dial way up. So it's taking the actual proportions and just exaggerating the hell out of them, but not really distorting them, just exaggerating them. Whereas distortion is completely, it's like, so it's not, the relationships are all wrong. So there is an argument within the community itself about what caricature actually is. And so when you were mentioning that, like, there was a lot of people who would not consider that caricature at all, but rather distortion.
Distortion art.
But yeah, it's like it's still a likeness.
Yes, and taking that likeness and making it slightly bizarre.
Of course, if you can't tell who it is, then it's not a very good likeness in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But, it's funny because like, the more like political cartoonists do this all the time, well, they'll get to a point where they'll just tweak it to eventually you'll accept something that there's not even a person there, and you'll accept it as representing somebody. Like in the case of George W. Bush, that there was a point in time where you would accept a cowboy hat as him because the artist behind it just kept slowly making the parts that were actually George less and less and less, and then pretty soon all you saw was a hat, and it was you knew who it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot easier for a political person because you're a lot of people more aware of that person, their brand, and what they symbolize, and so it's if you're a political cartoonist, that's a type of caricature, even though it's the art is trying to say bring forth a complex social, political, or news related story so people get it. And I've always loved that type of art because in a one frame you're able to actually capture something that is amazingly important to actually grasp it as like, oh, that's a terrible thing that's going on, or wow, I had no idea that's what was going on in the political arena, or I had no idea that the guys that were right-wing were that nuts, or the guys that were left-wing were that nuts, or the guys that are in the middle are pablum and not helping people out. So political cartoons, I think, are hugely important, and I just don't think that there's enough people out there that appreciate them as pure news. You know, they say, but it's an illustration, so I don't have to take it seriously. And I say, are you nuts? It's just a different type of communication. And if it's art, it tends to have more emotion, more evocative of emotion, because that's what great art does. It stirs you inside, not just reading a headline saying, oh, that's bad. It touches you on a heavier level. I want to talk to you about your transition from your original style, which was much more detailed, like you mentioned, almost realistic, or I wouldn't say super realistic, because that's another crazy level of art that blows my mind. But what drove you from pencil on paper to the digital format?
Time, expediency, that's a large portion of it. Like, I mean, I always was into digital art. Like, I used to use Microsoft MS Paint with a mouse, and getting a Wacom tablet drastically increased the amount of digital art I was doing. Because there was somebody who was on, let's see, it was a MySpace art group that I was in. The name he was using at the time was Michael Loves Drawing Flowers. And he was doing these intricate drawings in the digital medium of flowers, in this case, and fall scenes and all sorts of different stuff that he was painting digitally. Now, and in the process, he was using a tablet. And like, wow, that's pretty cool. You know, I'd never even heard of a tablet. So I had ended up getting one. And that opened up my eyes to the world of the digital realm. And so I started experimenting around, and the tablet I had at the time, it was Intuos 3, I want to say. And, you know, that one you're drawing separately from where you're looking. I mean, the screen and the tablet are separate, unlike the Cintiq, which I use today. And, you know, it was good, and my artwork definitely improved from that point. But it still wasn't as good as it could have been. But then when I eventually made the leap to the Cintiq as I currently use it, which thankfully at the time I was in a fairly decent financial position at the time. Certainly not now. I certainly couldn't do it today, not for the last several years actually. But I just so happened to have been, I had just gotten our tax return back because it was a year that New York Comic Convention was held in February. Now it's been held in October for the last 4 or 5 years, but at the time it was held in February, right after I'd got my tax return. So I had a few $1,000s from the tax return sitting in the bank. So when I got there and I saw one of these tablets, like, holy crap, that's going to completely transform my workflow. Maybe I should consider getting one. And I tried one. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So I called my wife and somehow miraculously convinced her to let me invest in one, because that's how I did look at it. I did look at it as an investment. I was, at the time, completely convinced I would make my money back, and I did. But it took several years. Actually, it took the advent of Google Plus till I actually did turn a profit from it. Mm. But I did eventually recoup my money from there. But the workflow, it was world different than using the other tablet, in my opinion anyway, which in itself was a world different from using a mouse.
Well, what was the difference?
Now, the main difference for me was I was looking where I'm drawing. I'm looking at my art while I'm drawing it. Whereas when you're using a mouse or when you're using the other type of tablet, you're looking at your monitor while your hand is moving down here, which for me was completely unnatural, because when I'm drawing on paper, it's not like I'm drawing on the paper and then drawing is magically being transported elsewhere and my focus is looking elsewhere. Now I'm looking at the paper. So it's just for me, way more natural. So yeah, it was really that aspect of it that I was able to draw where I'm, where the artwork actually is. And the pressure sensitivity on the pen that part was the same. It was 1024 levels, just like just like my other tablet. It was just now I didn't have that awkward hand-eye coordination problem, which I was getting better at, but it just wasn't for me. There's no way that tablet was going to replace pen and paper. It just couldn't. Not without a lot more work.
Mm-hmm. Well, I use a mouse a lot, and I can totally relate to what you're talking about, especially if I'm doing like Photoshop or stuff for my photography. I'm really good at looking at the screen and moving my hand because I've always had to do that. But I was over at a buddy's place the other day using a Wacom tablet, and I was able, within 2 minutes, be at the same level that I am with a mouse. It was just mind-blowing. Because you're right, it's like I'm looking at my picture and I'm drawing on the picture and the highlights are changing or whatever, and it's very intuitive. It's exactly how the artist's brain works.
Very intuitive. So to anyone who can afford them, they're not wonderful.
They're expensive, like $2,500 or something.
Not even remotely cheap. Yeah. They're certainly they're starting to be competitors to Wacom. I've never tried myself, but there are competitors out there. And now that tablets are becoming more popular, there's some of them that can do some of this stuff. In fact, Wacom themselves just came out with a portable tablet version of the Cintiq, which I would love to afford, but it's almost twice the price I paid for this thing. So I couldn't believe that. I saw that. I'm like, yeah, if I'm going to be spending that kind of money, I would just buy the latest version of the desktop one. I couldn't picture myself spending the money on the mobile one. I'm just like, not that money. I think they're like $4,000. I'm like, there's just no way I'm affording that. Not only could I not afford it, obviously I have an Indiegogo campaign to just make rent, but even if I was in a better position financially, I can't picture myself spending that on a mobile device, because I'm kind of old-fashioned in certain respects when it comes to that kind of stuff. I don't surf the web mobile ever. Mm-hmm. I think that idea is completely ridiculous. I think the idea of being able to surf the internet on a screen that small is just stupid. I think it's just, don't get me wrong, there's some apps I would use, certainly. But as far as surfing the web and using social media, hell no. It's just way too damn small. I wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. I think people are ridiculous. They're looking at their tiny little phones and doing all this social networking and this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, there's a whole world going on around you. Why the hell? Put this stupid thing down. You look like a moron.
Sorry.
But I'm kind of a crankety old man, get off my lawn type when it comes to that, because I think a lot of them just look stupid. I can't picture myself doing it. That being said, there are definitely apps, that would make me want to get a smartphone one of these days, but I'm happy with my flip phone for now. But like the one that'll tell you which train to take and what the walking directions are when you're walking through New York City. Yeah, that is a very helpful app, and for that I think the thing would be great. But as far as actual surfing the web, no. I think surfing. I don't even like the fact that my TV uses those mobile apps in many cases. Like, I hate the version of YouTube on my TV. It's a giant screen, huge thing. Treat it like the internet. I don't like the fact that the mobile version of sites is not the regular site. They have a separate site for it, and I think that's bad. I think that's just not good. I'd much rather use the real site.
Well, you know what? It's interesting. I find a mobile device is just way too slow, and the footprint for me, I've got a 24-inch screen, and for me that seems small, and I'm a meter away from it, so that's an equivalent of maybe a 200-inch screen in my living room. There's no way I'm going to blow all that money on a stupid 200-inch unit so I can surf the internet.
Right.
You know, it's
well,
crazy.
That's the other thing is like when I was talking about those portable art tablets is that. I have a 21-inch thing, and for me, this is too small. And I'd like to upgrade to at least the 24-inch. And then I have it attached to the iMac, so I have even more screen real estate. I love screen real estate. I wouldn't want to go less. I wish I had another port and another desk space to put another monitor on. I have another monitor. I just have nowhere to put it and no port connected to it at the moment. But I'd want more screen real estate. Why would I want to cut myself off to a smaller device? I just don't get it. But I think if I was doing something like this speed paintings or whatnot, in a setting like, say, a wedding or something like that, then I can see having the portability be useful because I'd be connecting it to a larger device, so people would be watching it on the larger device.
Yeah.
So there I could sort of see the benefit of having it. But to use it for what I would predominantly be using it for, which would be plein air painting, which is the reason I had always wanted a mobile version of the Cintiq. That I would use it for. That would be my primary purpose, and there's no way in hell I would even consider spending that kind of money on that. It's just that's stupid.
Well, you know what I'd do? I'd get a Mac Mini and just bring the little tiny Mac Mini and plug your Wacom tablet into the Mac Mini and then go into a larger monitor somewhere else that everybody could see. I mean, you could do it that way, and a Mac Mini is, a couple $300. So
right. If I was going to do that, I would just use my wife's laptop. If I was going to be doing that.
Exactly.
But I mean. But to be fair, the Cintiq itself it's not easy to lug around. It's big. In fact, the last time it's left this a place was actually when I was doing an event for Google Brazil. And then, I was doing it locally, but, it was via Hangout for Google Brazil. And what happened was it was the year that there was a giant blizzard in October that took out our power for a while. Oh. And it just so happened to be that it had taken out during a time that I was supposed to be doing their Hangout. So I had to tell them, I'm like, listen, I don't have any power. There's no way I can do your Hangout. But they really wanted it. So they're like, hey, listen, go wherever you need to go and we'll pay for it. I'm like, okay.
Sweet.
I'm not arguing you there. So I ended up doing it from a hotel. So that was the last time this Cintiq moved, in which I moved my iMac as well. And other than that, it's been plugged in and been used here since I moved into this place.
Hey,
hopefully I'll move it again. Hint, hint, hint.
Exactly. Well, you could ask Google to set up the fiber optics into your place, then you wouldn't have to worry about it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. And then I do Hangouts for Google, no problem. 2, 3, to cover the cost. I got Paul Johnston sent us a question. It says, basically, and it's similar to a question I asked you earlier. When and how, let me see, I'll just read the whole thing. If not covered, ask Cliff to give a quick summary as to how, when he became interested in drawing and how he progressed to where he is now. We've kind of got the beginning part, but we didn't get the progress to where you are now part, I don't think. What do you think? Did we cover that already?
Well, as far as how I progressed, lot of practice. A lot of YouTube videos to watch, being inspired by other artists. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's no substitute for practice. Practice as often as you possibly can. One of the things I used to do that way back in the day is I used to do a lot of pointillism. So I'd go to like the local diner and I'd hang out all night and I'd do a lot of, not really, it's not true. It wasn't true pointillism like Georges Seurat. It was more stippling, lots and lots of stippling. So I would do a full 18 by 24 picture in nothing but colored dots with a pilot pen. I mean, those things would literally take years to finish. But honestly, at the time, the goal was never actually finishing the piece. It'd be like I'd finish it to a certain part at home, and then I would just go and I'd whip it out. And that sounded bad, but it would serve almost the same purpose in public and work on it. But at the time, truthfully, it wasn't about the art. It was more about the display and the people stuff like, oh, wow, that's awesome. That's all in dots. How the hell did you do that? And, it was more like showmanship. I was
exhibitionism. I was thinking too.
Exactly. Right, and I got more excited about the people seeing my work and praising it, and that's not really a good thing for your growth. It's really a bad thing.
Well, I beg to disagree. I know it may be being motivated to do art by what other people say and
right,
getting high off of that. But
the problem, in my opinion, was, or the problem in that particular circumstances is I was never finishing it, because I knew if I ever, I almost never finished the piece because I wanted to keep it in that halfway part where I could show an almost finished piece of work and be working on it, so they'd see me working on it. But not because if I finished it, then I have to start another one and get to that halfway part. And when you're doing all dots, it takes a while. So that aspect of it was very bad because I wasn't doing it to finish it. That wasn't the point.
You were staging it. You were staging it.
Exactly.
Hey, look at
it was,
me,
it was
man.
an elaborate stage, and it was kind of strange. And so a lot of people, even to this day, a lot of my friends who I hang out with at the same diner or whatnot, will be like, "Hey, do you ever do any of those dot pictures anymore?" And they still talk about it to this day. It's really weird. And a couple of them ended up buying them. So there are some people who have some of them in collections around the world, but it's not a style that it started to hurt my wrist actually after a while. So I started teaching myself to use my other hand. But so that was kind of a strange phase I had gone through where I was just doing dots. I never really did any painting at that point. Certainly nothing digital other than screwing around in Microsoft MS Paint. And then at a certain point, I started drawing, because I always doodled, but started drawing and people were like, "Hey, that's pretty cool." And I started drawing. A lot of my drawing was done at a diner. And I had friends who were artists, so I'd see them draw, and they kind of inspired me to draw. That's kind of what started me on the more drawing, taking things a little bit more seriously, and got me out of that whole exhibitionism sort of phase and more into. But
I used to do that for photography too. When I was
earlier,
love having 5 or 6 people around me, right, watching me take pictures of models and stuff. For me, it was
yes, like I'm awesome.
Yeah,
but it's funny, much earlier in my career, as such as it was. Talking about early grade school, middle school maybe. The one and only fight I almost got into, and I say almost only because I didn't show up in time because I was held back. And everybody probably thought I wussed out, but I actually didn't. What had happened was I had sold some artwork, and it was like some stupid desert scene. It was really bad artwork. But when I was in middle school, what the hell? It was some rocky desert scene where there was some mountain range in the background, some cactuses or something, or whatnot. And someone had bought it off me. And then later in the same day, I happened to see somebody else with it. I'm like, "Oh, where'd you get this?" And somebody's like, "Oh, so-and-so made it. Oh, isn't it awesome?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's awesome. It's mine. I made that." Here's like 10 more just like it. So I challenged the guy to a fight. And then I ended up being delayed for it. And I remember showing up, and I was walking up towards where the football field was. And I saw some people walking down from it, like, "Is everybody still there? Is there still..." The guy was already gone, and I never caught up with him, and we joked about it afterwards. But yeah, one and only time I almost got into a fight, and it was a plagiarism case.
Hey, never screw around with an artist. I wanted to actually, because what you're doing right now is quite interesting. You've got this portrait upside down. Why upside down? Does it enable you to perceive it differently?
More fresh perspective at what I'm looking at, because I notice I'll sometimes draw skewed if I stay in one. That's why I'll flip the canvas a lot, and that's actually one of the points about when I work digitally is the lack of ability to easily. I could turn it around, but it'd be not directly flipped, it'd be flipped and reversed.
Yeah.
And so I could also flip horizontally and all that. So it just gives me it refreshes my brain, so to speak. So I catch my errors a lot quicker, like where I'm going off track.
Yeah.
And in this case, I just have to be flipping the reference as well. But so whereas if I'm doing traditional art, I can't do that as much. I could hold a mirror up to it, and that's the classic way of doing it. It's no different than when classic artists would hold a mirror up to their work to get a fresher perspective. The purpose is no different at all.
Interesting. When did you meet your wife? Was it in one of these exhibitionist type of experiences, or something different?
I met my wife at a party in I want to say it was in high school. She's the same woman I took to the prom. But she didn't go to my high school. She went to a different high school. But I was working at Boston Market at the time. Actually, I think it was still Boston Chicken at the time. So I was working there, and I was at this, one of the coworkers, he was having some sort of party, and the party was ridiculously lame. The only good thing that ever came out of that party was I met my wife. But so I just started talking to her, which is really weird for me because I was kind of a shy person when it comes to that. Definitely. But we started talking, and I think at one point in the night I was sacrificing gummy bears on a dartboard. And I remember at one point we went to, there was the local high school had some sort of square dance that since the party was really, really lame, we all went to, and we just started talking and hanging out, and then we went to some other party which was a lot more interesting, but by the time we got there everybody was passed out drunk. And being an undrinker myself, and I was only a teenager at the time, that kind of weirded me out. So yeah, and then we just started hanging out from that point on, and so many years later, I don't even like to think of how long it's been. Whew. It's going on, let's see, 20 years?
Wow. Cool.
It's getting close to 20. Well, let's see, I graduated in 96, and we were going out when I graduated. So I met her when I myself was 17 and she was 15. And so she's, let's see, it's 2000. So yeah, it's about 18 years ago.
Hey, do you think it was love at first sight, or it just evolved?
I think there's a lot of boring people here, and you're semi-interesting at first sight. As far as love at first sight, I don't know. I mean, she was definitely the most interesting person in my opinion there. I don't know if she felt the same way about me, but for some reason, she hung out with me and whatnot, and we did hit it off fairly early. As if every relationship we've had our ups and downs, and there was periods of time where we weren't together, but for the most part, we've been together fairly happily ever since.
Cool. The style that you do now, your caricature style, because you've got two types. You've got this quick painting, which basically is practice for you to keep your eye fresh. Then you do this incredibly detailed, I guess it is caricature style too, but it's so rich. Is it using the same technique, or what are you doing?
I do, in the most part, I do it completely. The style is completely different. I started in a different way. It's the goal of this, this I'm screwing around with. I mean, not screwing around with, but my goal here isn't like a complete finished illustration as it is in those. Whereas those, I usually start sketch. I'll do the sketching in Sketchbook Pro. I do a lot of sketching in that program, which is fantastic for this purpose of sketching. I don't do much finished work in there, except for figure paintings, because I like practicing and my figure painting in there. And I have plenty of YouTube videos depicting that. But as far as these go, I wouldn't paint in that program. It's not really suitable for that. At least not the way I use it. But I mean, it's a sketch program, and that's what it's for, and that's what it's good for. So I do all my prep work in there. But I usually will try and get a close to finished sketch before I even start painting, and then I would start the painting process, which if anybody who's actually interested in the full process I use, it is available on my YouTube channel.
Okay.
I do show the subject in that particular case is Mark Jansen, and I do the full thing from start to finish on how I do a...
Oh, nice. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's very interesting. You mentioned that you use different programs to get when you're doing different type of art.
Yes.
I had something, I used to do lots of illustrations. I mean, I used to do a lot of art, and then I left it and I got into photography. And I really love doing wide-angle photography, 24 mil and stuff. I got into photojournalism. About 7 years later, I was making enough money in photography that I said, hey, I should get back into art, because I basically said I'm going to concentrate on the photography and just put the art to the side. And when I started doing art again, it came out with a completely different style, had a very wide-angle feel to it, because my eye was trained, or my brain was trained to see in a wide view. Has anything like that happened for you?
It can. Like I said, I'm still, like the longer I work on a piece, I will move more towards portraiture as opposed to caricature.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I've taken to doing to sort of counteract that is I will take my reference itself into Photoshop and sort of do all my exaggeration choices in the reference.
Mm-hmm.
So before I actually start the painting, my reference itself is exaggerated. So I'm not going to be tempted to bring it back towards the original proportions because they're not there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really looking at the original proportions, so it kind of short circuits my brain. I've only started doing that in the last several, so I was able to do a better exaggeration, and the rendering is overall better because as I'm painting, I'm not fighting myself. I'm not fighting my original tendency. So what would happen otherwise, I'd be trying to, as I'm painting, move towards a more correct, even though that's not the proper term, but more accurate as far as the photo goes, the references, proportions, even though I initially didn't want to. So the painting will be set up for exaggeration, but then as I'm working on it, I start moving towards this and less exaggerated, and that would kind of hurt the rendering. So they're not as good as it could be because I'd be fighting my own instincts.
Yeah.
I found a way to short circuit that, and there's a noticeable jump in the quality of the artwork I'm doing because now I'm not fighting that instinct as much, or I'm counteracting it.
Well, it probably is based on, because you originally did very accurate art, you've got the ability to you're like a human camera, and the more detailed I knew a guy that did these amazing paintings, and it was made up of hundreds of, or maybe even thousands of layers of very light washes with acrylic and oils, and it took him 6 months to paint, but the depth and the color was amazing. You just look at it and you'd fall into the painting.
And that's one of the things I'm really loving about the markers now that I'm playing around with them is the different washes of them, like you said, because I treat it in layers, actually. I like the depth you can get with it, with the different layering you can do with the marker. So yeah, I really like the depth you can get with markers, and I'm hoping eventually to get colored ones. Which is on my Amazon artist wish list.
Hint, hint.
Hint.
Could you take that one, scan it, and then add color hues to it? You could do it that way.
Oh, yeah.
Do you do illustrations and stuff like that for magazines and for illustrative purposes like that?
I would love to. I just don't currently. I'm hoping to eventually move into more of that. It's weird to say this because, on one aspect, I can do marketing fairly well. I mean, I do have a Indiegogo campaign right now that is a good chunk funded, mostly through, promoting. But when it comes to that end of things, I'm not good at that. Like, I'm selling myself in that respect. I'm not really that good. Although I think my work is certainly of the right quality level, I myself don't know how to approach that, so to speak. And I've been... Okay,
here's how you do it. You choose the magazine that you would like to work for, right? You just say, I want to work for this magazine. Then you get copies of that magazine and find a double-page spreads or some large spread where they're talking about a story and they used a photograph. And then basically scan that page, like the double page, and or single page, and take the photograph out digitally and then read the story and then illustrate something that's better than the photograph and put your image in and make a portfolio specific to that, and then go see the editor and say, hey, I was I'm an illustrator in town, blah blah blah, and I noticed I really love your magazine, and I did some mock-ups of what I would do if I was given the opportunity to do illustrations for your magazine, and then show them stories that they've already published, and because then it's a hindsight thing. Say, wow, that works great. That's awesome, because then it shows that if he'd hired you to do that story, that's what they would have got. And it's kind of like proof of concept, more than here's a portfolio of a bunch of my art and they don't relate to it as like in their magazine. But if it's in their magazine, then you're playing in their yard, and if they like it and it works for them, it's great. But they can also make a good call saying, nah, I just don't think that style works for us. It's great, thank you very much, and then choose another magazine, do the same thing.
Right.
And you don't have to do like a ton, just do 3.
No, I was just saying that is a fascinating idea.
I wanted to ask you, are you basically a homebody, always on the East Coast? Do you travel a lot in the States?
No, actually, being that I'm not the most financially gifted, so to speak. I don't really travel much. And I'm also kind of travel phobic. Um, the which I'm coming out of my shell slightly because I'm a would-be hermit, really. Um, the other year, I want to say it was early 2012 when I went to New York City for one of the New York City hurls and met a lot of awesome people there. That was like one of the first few times that I've gone out of my general vicinity in a while. So no, I'm not very well traveled, although I would like to start traveling more.
What about the future for you? Where do you see yourself? Do you want to do more this type of art? Do you want to break out into a totally different type of art? What are you thinking?
That is a big question, and I honestly don't know the answer at this moment because I've fluctuated from one thing to another as far as style or subject matter, and it kind of all, I don't know, it eventually just intermingles. So one thing will influence the other. But as far as like the big question, what do you want to be when you grow up? I have no damn clue. I really don't. And I'm not sure that there's a lot of artists, I think, who don't really know. And one of the things about being an artist is that, yeah, I don't really have an overarching goal in that kind of respect because I really don't know. There are some things I definitely want to learn to get better at, like I want to be better at perspective and that kind of stuff and some of the fundamental stuff, but that can be applied to anything subject-wise. I do know I love concept art. Like I love making of movies and that kind of stuff. And growing up, I had always imagined myself like going to work for like Jim Henson's Creature Shop and whatnot, doing like the set design and puppetry and animatronics and that kind of stuff. But then when I looked what I was actually doing, the artwork I was going, it was much more illustration based. It was a completely different track. And I just never got into doing like the sculptures and so because the point where it's like, is it something that I actually want to do or just something I really enjoy looking at other people doing? And do I actually want to do any of that myself? Because if I did, why ain't I? For example, like one of my favorite bands to watch and go see is Guar, and they do all sorts of stuff. And I know people who have gone and now they actually do work for them because they pursued it. That's what they wanted, and I'm not. And so there's a point where you have to say, well, why not? Maybe it's not something I actually want to do myself, and it's just art form or something I admire in other people doing. And I think that's the point I got, because if that was something I had actually wanted to do, I'd be doing it in some shape or form. Like whereas illustrations, like doing portraits and that kind of stuff, that's something I do, and that's what I actually do. But yeah, I had always, growing up, would have loved to get into that, or at least that's what I tell myself. But like I said, if I actually would have loved to do it, I would have been doing it in some form, and I'm not.
And it's a different concept because that's three-dimensional structure, and it's totally different than drawing. I mean, you can draw an idea that looks three-dimensional, but then building a prototype and then manufacturing the prototype so it's a functional puppet, that's a huge step. I mean, that's a big difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have, I have done some sculpture, I wouldn't say, but not anything even remotely on that kind of level. Not even close.
Well, it's a special skill set. Like every skill set, it can be learned. It's just, do you have the time?
Yes. Do you have the time and do you have the will? Mm-hmm. Will, in that case, is much more important than actual skill. The
fortitude to put up with it and do it and push and push and push forever.
I hate when I think I'm working on a different layer and I'm not.
Yeah, I do that all the time in Photoshop. It's like, why isn't that changing?
Just like going around the pupil or the iris here, so I can make sure that the eyeball's the same when I start working on the other one. And then I realize, I'm still on the same damn layer. So, that's not going to help.
Yeah, oops. No.
The eyeball to the lid, and I'm like, wait, that's not going to work here.
So do you think there's a future for this type of illustration?
You mean like doing speed painting like I'm doing now, or
just
typical?
Like, what do you mean by?
Well, this is more traditional painting art, or doing what you're doing in your Wacom tablet and building up layer by layer by layer, compared to people doing wireframe structure and creating 3D things that way, right?
It depends on in what field. So I think in some fields, like as we were talking about concept art before, in that field, if you can do the quicker you can get stuff done, the more stuff you can do, the more valuable you're going to be. Because instead of hiring somebody to conceptualize just to pass it off to a 3D modeler, if the one conceiving it can do the 3D modeling themselves and already finish that, then it's higher value.
Mm-hmm.
But will there be a place for it? Yeah, I think there will be, but in what market? And that's the big question. And it's not one I really have an answer to. I do know there is a push by several people who are trying to do much more traditional artwork, like instead of using CG, using actual puppets and animatronics, which I personally support fully because I much, much prefer traditional puppetry and animatronics in proportion. I mean, some CG is good. I mean, there's some things that it's great for, but there's other things where, in my opinion, cheapens it. For example, the newer Star Wars movies, when they did the close-ups of Yoda, they should have used a damn Muppet because the eyes looked horrible.
Yeah, they really screwed it up. Yeah.
They were bad. Or when they did Jabba, those eyes were dreadful, whereas the original puppetry eyes were awesome. They were great, and so the feel is different. So a push to more traditional media and that kind of spec, I think is a good thing because the result is better. Mm-hmm. And that's more. So it's not the fact that, oh, this is digital versus that, and digital's horrible. I would never say that since I'm a digital painter. But what matters to me is I'm very results orientated, and if the result is dreadful, you're using a bad process. And in my opinion, in those circumstances, the result itself is pathetic. I mean, it's just bad.
Mm-hmm.
And even you can tell when a place is starting to cut corners with their effects budget.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect example, modern day, currently airing actually, is I would say Once Upon a Time in Wonderland. There's the Once Upon a Time main series, and then there's the one in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Well, the Once Upon a Time in main series has a pretty good special effects. They're starting to get a little bit more cheesy this season, but for the most part, their special effects are pretty damn good. They're not bad at all. There's at no point when I was watching the earlier seasons was I taken out of the story and said, "Wow, that looks like crap."
Yeah. Yeah.
At no point watching the original series. Whereas when watching Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, which I had high hopes for, I started watching the first episode and it came time to someone like, wow, that scenery is really, really cheesy. 20 years ago CG, it's bad. It's just horrible. And then they showed the Cheshire Cat, and I'm just like, what were they smoking when they greenlighted this? It's because the quality was bad. It was enough to the point where I was watching it, and I was kind of offended even watching it that they were trying to pass this off because it just wasn't good. And it had nothing to do with the fact that it was CG. It was just bad, in my opinion. So, I mean, take that with a grain of salt. But so that's a prime example where it was obvious their budget wasn't up to snuff, or they weren't. The art director was on vacation. I don't know what the hell the story was there. Or I think originally that was supposed to be just a summer fill-in series, and then when they greenlighted it to a main series, I don't think they upped their budget enough to compensate for that.
Yeah, yeah.
So they were probably trying to do a full series on the same budget they had for a summer fill-in, and I think that might have been what happened there. I don't really know.
Yeah, somebody said yes too many times.
If you work on a show, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of the effects that suck. I'm sorry. There's one scene where they were all in a field. Or not in a field. They were in the rose garden or something like that, and one of the characters was being turned into a statue. And everybody's shadow is going one direction except for Alice's shadow, who was going a different direction.
Oops.
And I'm like, where was the art director for that? I mean, that's an obvious compositing error.
Yeah.
I mean, when you have the whole scene's shadows going one direction and the other character's shadow going the complete different direction, which light source doesn't account for, that was just bad. It was just...
Well, it's like those websites that like Photoshop horror stories, and how could they publish something that's it's so obvious when you're looking at it. But a lot of times, stuff like that gets lost in the panic of production, or the,
Exactly.
you don't have enough people on set. You've got somebody doing 3 people's job, and stuff flip through. And it's
that's, I think, the problem with every industry is that as companies tighten their belt, they're like, hey, wait a second, we got 5 guys doing this. Why do we got 5 guys doing this? Let's put 1 guy in charge of this, and we'll just expect the same results. And that's when customer service starts to fly out the window, and all these other errors. It's because there's people trying to do the job of more people, and companies cutting corners. It happens over and over again in every industry, and that's certainly not immune to that.
Yeah, I'm doing a web series right now, but we're starting at a ridiculously low budget, so we know that already. And a lot of it is, me doing consulting on set and saying, well, guys, we can't do that because we don't have a budget for it, so don't complain. And somebody was saying, we're not happy with the sound, and I said, well, the reason you're not happy with the sound is because we're not miking it properly, and the reason we're not miking it because you don't have a $400 a day budget for proper mics. And they went, oh, okay. So as long as you explain it to them, I said, look, we're not trying to do something that's TV level. This is a web series, and it's great writing, great story. The actors are doing a really good job. The lighting's adequate, and the sound's very easy to hear. It's just got a little bit of it's in a big room, so you get a little bit of a big room sound.
There's other factors that can compensate for it. It's no problem at all. Like with comics, it's not about the artwork at all. The art can completely suck. It's the writing.
Yep.
Writing is what's important in comics. It's with when I'm talking about comics, I'm talking about like the daily comics, like
yes,
that kind of comic, not
gags,
not
things like
that. Yeah, those kind of comics. So with those, it's all writing. The artwork could be complete crap and it won't matter.
So who was your favorite comic book artist when you were growing up? Me, it was Doonesbury.
I always loved. I did like Doonesbury. Growing up, let's see. I always liked Far Side.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah.
Loved the Far Side. I think as far as collections go, it's the only collections I ever actually bought. I used to love reading all the Garfield's collections.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Calvin and Hobbes.
Yeah.
I remember when, at least in our paper, I don't know what it was like in other papers, but in our paper, Dilbert took over for Calvin and Hobbes, their spot. And, at the time, I was too young to realize that the Calvin and Hobbes guy was retiring and not making anymore. In my head, it was the newspaper's fault. Like, they were choosing this guy over that guy. And I remember having this irrational hatred of Dilbert at the time because of that reason, which is weird because it actually went on to be one of my favorite.
Did you ever get into? Did you get into Pearls Before Swine?
I love Pearls Before.
Isn't it awesome? Oh,
I am a big Pearls Before. I like was it F minus? I love that sense of humor, and I've noticed that's much more prevalent in comics these days.
Mm-hmm.
Is the kind of humor that they have in Pearls Before Swine.
Yeah,
and I am a big fan of Pearls Before Swine. That is one of the best comic books written today. I like Zitz. Zitz is a great comic that's written today. Luann's a pretty good one. Because I like ones that have storylines that evolve.
Yes, yeah.
I do like storylines. That's why I loved For Better or For Worse. Because characters actually grow. I mean, I like straight gag ones as well. But I do like ones with actual storyline.
Yes.
I like Sally Forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty decent one. Trying to think of like, as far as more classic ones go, I always liked Peanuts. Those were great. Or Blondie.
Mm-hmm.
Although the main problem I always had with Blondie is that the son looked way too much like Dagwood, and the sister looked way too much like Blondie. and in some cases, unless the context was obvious, it was hard to tell who was who. I'm like, wait a second. So the context usually told you whether that was Dagwood or son, or his dress is slightly different, but the look was just too similar. But the storylines were always great.
Now, did you ever get into the more underground style comics, the weird, like the Freak Brothers and Crom and those guys?
Not as much, no. In a lot of cases, I probably didn't even hear of them until much later.
Mm-hmm.
Although there are some great web comics out there that I've gotten into over the years. Sort of into. I don't read as much as I used to, but I liked Red Meat. I don't know if you ever heard of Red Meat, but those are some pretty twisted comics.
Mm-hmm. Did you get into Bone? That was a pretty recent series, very popular with kids.
I have read some of Bone. I haven't read as much as I would like to, but somebody who I have recently started following a lot, Will Terrell, talks about Bone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm considering reading some more, but it's been a long time since I've read any Bone comics. But I am familiar with them. I just haven't read them recently.
Yeah, well, there's so much stuff out there. It's you've got to make decisions.
Another really great comic is now it's right on the tip of my tongue. It's going to bother me that I'm not thinking of it.
That's okay. I'm used to that.
Where I Vent My Spleen.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one. That sounds awesome.
If you haven't heard of that, go check it out. I don't know how much stuff he's done as of recently, but he has a great blog where he posts his stuff, and I think it's spleenal.com but if you just Google Where I Vent My Spleen, you'll find it.
Yeah.
It's very, very well written. He has a very unique style of artwork. So when you see the artwork, you would know it's his immediately because he has a very unique style.
Yeah.
And the comedy in it, the sense of humor, the drawings, it is just very good storytelling. The overall storytelling is very, very good in my opinion. And he has some longer form ones, and he has some shorter stuff. But yeah, very, in my opinion, well written. I like it. So very highly recommended. So if you get a chance, go look that up.
No, I will. I wanted to ask you, what advice would you give to young artists that are making the decision, should I become a commercial artist and try and make my career art, or should I just get a job, survive, and do art as a hobby? What do you think they should, what would you recommend?
Ooh, that's a really tough one because I myself don't do this as a career, so to speak. I mean, I do have a full-time job that's not art related.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if I'm even in a position to be qualified to even give that sort of advice.
Well, you've made the decision to do it that way, and do you feel that you've got more freedom?
You know, it's weird because I did that. I kind of defaulted into that. The reason I did that is because right about the time when I was planning on going to art school, it turns out I was having my first daughter instead. So that kind of made the decision for me, because I was like, well, wait a second, now I'm not just responsible for myself or myself and my wife. I'm responsible for a family now.
Yeah.
Now, the one you saw earlier, that's my sixth. So I have lots of kids. So I went the family route.
Yeah.
And then you have then your concerns are different, like, because I want to make sure I'm fully insured and all that kind of other stuff. So it's extra stuff going on. But I mean, so now I'm waiting until my wife's currently going to school full time. So after she's done with school, then I'll start, worrying about doing this more career wise. Right now it's, while I do want to sell more, obviously, I wouldn't consider this my career. It's my training to eventually be my career, but not as of yet, because I do, I want to keep my insurance the way it is now, because it's not like, I think ultimately I'd be able to make more money than I am currently doing artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I think I could be much more financially secure doing artwork, I think, eventually long term, but there is the short term part where I'd be making less. So yeah, as they say, don't give up your day job. You want to, especially in freelance where it's hit or miss.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be working your ass off. If you do have a job, keep it. You'd be a fool to get rid of it until you have enough savings to go where if you can go a few months without getting a job, so to speak, or a paying gig, you want to make sure you have enough backed up. You don't want to be stupid with your money, I am.
Yeah.
You don't want to be stupid with your money and then end up having to do an Indiegogo campaign to try and pay your bills. Because
hey, whatever works.
And that's with being fully employed.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it is a dangerous economy. But on the other hand, safe is risky. So playing it safe is not necessarily a good thing. Like, if it's to a young person, I would say, do what you do, regardless of whether you are paid for it or not. As to quote Neil Gaiman, make great art. So if you're an artist, make great art. It doesn't matter what you're doing for money or whatnot. That doesn't matter. Make great art. and that you could do regardless of what you're doing for a living or whatever job you're doing. And if you're if you're in a job that you don't necessarily like but you do need, that doesn't stop you from being responsible for getting yourself out there and increasing your skill level, because you don't need a job to increase your skill level. You could be doing that on any job. I don't care what it is. There's always time to be increasing your art. No matter what you're doing, there's always time where you can be doing artwork.
Yeah, yeah. Don't come home and be a vegetable.
Right. And it's not easy. If you want to be very good at what you do, you got to do. And it's anyone who's ever made it in the freelancing business that I've ever talked to is you're going to sacrifice a lot of time. Like, so while your friends are out partying, maybe it's a better idea if you're drawing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to the party, that's great. When they pass out drunk, draw them. I mean, they're great subjects, So, yeah, your time is literally your life. So you want to make sure you're spending your time doing what you want to be doing. Yeah. And yeah, you're going to have other responsibilities that you have to do, whether you like it or not. But you can always make almost anything fun, really.
Well, if it gets you through the day, yeah. Exactly. Well, the thing is, I think if you're working in a job that's enabling you to survive, it doesn't burn you out too much, and you're able to come home and do what you love to do, then that's a good lifestyle.
Right.
Go ahead.
I do want to caution against. One thing you don't want to do is don't take just any art job because it is an art job.
Mm-hmm.
You are far, far better off taking a job that's completely un-art related, as long as it doesn't kill your love of art. You don't want to take a job that isn't the kind of art you want to be doing, but just because it is an art job and you can say you do art for a living, don't take it if it's not the kind of art you really want to be doing, because it will sap all your creative energy. You will hate it.
Yep.
And then you won't be drawing for yourself. You're much better off drawing for yourself and doing something else for the man. So if you're going to be doing something you don't want to be doing, don't be doing something creative, because it will sap your strength, and then you won't have the energy to come home and work on your own stuff, and you'll hate yourself for it.
Yep. And then that's just a circle that you spiral slowly down into oblivion.
Yes, and then you'll be like, there was a time I wanted to be an artist, but
now I'm just a multi-billionaire. I'm so sad.
What the hell,
Life sucks.
Well, I think those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. Hopefully one day I'll figure it out and let you know. I don't think I'd ever be I don't think I could be, because I don't think I keep money long. I give most of it away. I could. To me, the idea of having money sitting around in a bank just for the sake of having money sitting around in a bank is
it's kind of weird.
It's just, for me, morally wrong. I think it serves no purpose. To me, money is a medium of exchange. If you're not actually exchanging it, it's useless. It serves no purpose.
Yeah.
You can't take it with you, and I'm kind of sort of against the idea of inheritance to begin with.
Well, the weird thing about money and art is they're the opposites part of the spectrum, right? It's like you can spend your whole life trying to make a bunch of money and have a bunch of investments so you can basically go live in Mexico. But once you've done all that and you go to Mexico, what are you going to do? So, I'm going to become a poet, or I'm going to be an artist. No, it doesn't work that way. You've got to do poetry and you've got to do art your whole life and then go to Mexico and write.
Right. You're going to do what you're going to do.
Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's one thing. I think that's one of the things that separate the entrepreneurs from everybody else, is that somebody who makes their own million, it's not because they started with $1 million, it's because that's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
So you could give them absolutely nothing, they're going to make the money because that's what they do. Just like I draw, that's what they do. It's ingrained.
Yep.
And there's people who can't stand people like that because it just seems to come natural. It's not natural. It's just, it is sort of natural. It's just what they do. Just like somebody who's talented in one area is talented at that. So yeah, an entrepreneur, or a true entrepreneur, will be able to make money eventually. They'll fail a shitload of times because if they haven't, they're not really good at what they do. But
now I wanted to, because I want to wrap up, for people that want to get art from you. Now, what you did for me was a quick sketch. You do stuff that's way more it's almost super realistic. Now, how do people describe your art? So if they say, "Oh, I love that," and then they can contact you, as I want this style, and here's a picture to do it.
I usually I'll ask like which album, like, because I have my speed paintings like I just did for you, and my more finished pieces in a completely different album. So I'll usually show them the album, like which one do which style are you looking for, more like this, more like that, or something completely different.
But it's more like I don't want a caricature for myself. I want myself in a weird scene or something like that. Or do you prefer just doing the portrait?
I like doing different things to challenge myself. So I'm open to almost anything. But there are some things that if it's something that I don't think I can pull off very well in most cases, I would just tell you outright to go somebody else. And I'll usually point you to exactly who. Especially if you want vector work, I'm not your guy. I don't work in vectors. I almost never do. For that, you're better off going to Mike Searle.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you. I forgot earlier on. What's the resolution of these pieces? Are they because you're working on a pixel base, right?
All right. For the one that I did of you, the speed paintings are all 150 ppi. Okay. They're set that if they were printed, they'd be 8x10 set for 150 ppi, so it moves a little quicker. But
yep.
The fuller ones, those are optimized for printing out at 11x14 at 300 dpi.
Yeah. Okay.
So let's see. So my digital caricatures, Google Plus sometimes does that if I'm hanging out for any length of time. So here's a plethora of ones that I've done. Some of them are people you might recognize from if you have them in your streams or whatnot for Google Plus. Others are celebrities, and you might recognize that way.
Now, how long does it take you to do one of these very, very detailed ones? They're like photographic almost.
It really depends. I've gotten a lot faster in my process because now that I've worked out that, so I'm not having that argument with myself, but I would say about 15 hours, depending. 10 to 15 hours, 25. It really depends on, because I don't work on them straight. I'm usually working on other things, and it also depends how distracted I am by social media, truthfully. And
how much does it cost because there's a big difference between a quickie sketch that takes you an hour or two compared to one of these?
All right, so one like this, at the moment, it would be 200, as it says right here. You commission something similar. But it really depends on the tight deadline. So if you wanted it, say, by a quicker deadline than different, or if you wanted, this is just a generic background that I made up, but if you wanted it in a different scene or something like that, then it would be more expensive. So it's on a case-by-case basis.
Look at Cliff. Thank you for spending so much time with me today. It was awesome.
Oh, you're taking time.
A lot of chatting and a lot of great content, and I'm sure the listeners will love it.
Nice. Yeah, like I said, I could ramble on endlessly about anything. So
as long as you're doing art, it's like, oh yeah, da 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 da. Well, thanks for everybody for listening, and we'll have another Maven interview coming up in a couple of weeks, I'm sure. Ciao for now.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you enjoyed the show, and I'm sure you will love our next guest, but until then, visit the website at maveninterviews.com for more information and links to iTunes, Twitter, and other social media platforms. If you would like to leave a message, please call 1-877-636-1474. You never know, it might be you featured on the show.